Hello, church. It's that time of the week. We're going to get back into the book of Proverbs. So get your Bible out, or if you want to use your phone, the app there, just turn over to Proverbs chapter 6. Last week, we looked at the first 5 verses in this chapter. And this week, we're going to jump into the next set of verses and get all the way down to verse 11. These verses belong together, in my opinion. So we'll read the first 5 and go right on down through verse number 11 and make some remarks. Solomon writes to his son Rehoboam, verse number 1, "My son, if thou be surety for thy friend, if thou hast stricken thy hand with a stranger, thou art snared with the words of thy mouth, thou art taken with the words of thy mouth. Do this now, my son, and deliver thyself. When thou art come into the hand of thy friend, go, humble thyself, and make sure thy friend. Give not sleep to thine eyes, nor slumber to thine eyelids. Deliver thyself as a roe from the hand of the hunter, and as a bird from the hand of the fowler." Verse number 6. He says, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Consider her ways, and be wise." Referring to the ant, he says, "Which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want will come as an armed man." So in the first 5 verses, Solomon is speaking clearly to his son, and he's addressing the fallacy of co-signing for a friend. And we went through that last week in detail. But I think he stays on subject here, doesn't he? In talking to his son about not co-signing for a friend because of the financial ramifications, because of the relationship ramifications, he tells his son, you need to get out of that agreement. Do whatever it takes. There needs to be some urgency to get out of that agreement. You're dealing with someone who needs a loan, meaning they probably lack the financial means to pay for that loan, and there's a good chance they lack the discipline to pay for that loan, so get out of that loan. And what he deals with in the next set of verses is all about spending and saving. It's all about really that financial category, and he's dealing with someone he calls a sluggard. So he's on subject, but I think he is dealing with somebody different than who he's been talking to. In the first set of verses, he said twice in verses 1 and 3, "My son, do this now, my son." So he's clearly talking to his son as a father, giving him parental and paternal counsel. And then here in verse number 6, as well as in verse number 9, he then addresses someone who's called the sluggard. Now it seems to me very improbable that he's talking to his son and giving his son sound counsel to get out of an arrangement to help pay for his friend. It seems improbable that he would then be still addressing his son and telling him that he's a sluggard and telling him that he's lazy. Well, there's a good chance the friend came to Rehoboam to help him with this loan because Rehoboam probably had the means to take care of it. So I don't think he's addressing his son. I think he abruptly shifts his audience from son to the friend of his son. That's what we learned about in verse number 3. This individual that Rehoboam was either tempted to co-sign for or did co-sign for, or perhaps it's just a hypothetical scenario, that friend is the one who's coming to Rehoboam, and he's the one who needs the loan. So I think Solomon is turning now his attention to the friend. He's writing almost as though in giving his counsel to his son to get out of this agreement, the friend then is upset with the father of Rehoboam, Solomon, for suggesting that and meddling with this. And therefore, Solomon is addressing now him and his concerns, and he's going beyond the co-signing. He won't even mention co-signing here. He won't mention the loan in verses 6 through 11. He's going to deal with the root problem. He's going to deal with the primary problem, which is truly the lack of discipline and the laziness in this friend. Loans are necessary simply when we don't have enough money available. Loans are taken when we don't have enough money sitting aside that we're able to use for a certain expense. And most of the time, not all the time, obviously there are tragedies, obviously there are things that go beyond our abilities, but most of the time we need a loan because we lack the funds And most of the time we lack the funds because we lack the discipline to either save the funds or work hard enough to accrue the funds. And that's just a fact of getting loans. Most of the time it's a result of either our poor work ethic or because of our income problems due to saving and spending issues within ourselves. Now, assuming these 11 verses are tied together, verses 1 through 11, and again, there's no reason to conclude that they're not, it would appear to me that the lack of discipline on the friend's part is what has prompted Solomon to write these words. He probably had enough insight into Rehoboam and the friend he was dealing with to look at him, and because of the wisdom that Solomon had, he was able to look and see this man's issues were not just a result of some unforeseen tragedy that he couldn't possibly have enough money for, but most likely this young guy wanted a new chariot, or he wanted some new camel, something that his eyes were covetous of, and he didn't take the time to save up the money to buy it, and he couldn't wait, so he went out and bought it. That's most likely what's going on here, and that wouldn't be uncommon at all. Young people, the younger we are, we seem to have less patience, but yet bigger eyes. Big eyes, small patience, if you would. We like what we see. We want to get it. And if you suggest in any way that, no, wait another year, save up, a year is an eternity to a young person. The older we get, the shorter a year sounds or a month sounds. But the younger we are, this idea of waiting longer to get something we want, it's harder for young people. That's why a lot of young couples, when they first get married, they'll take out loans for things that they shouldn't. Loans for furniture, loans for electronics. They'll get the fancy car. They'll take out loans for things that they could save up for and not have to deal with the interest and not deal with all the problems that come with taking out loans. And so I think what he's dealing with here is probably the same problem most of us have when we're young. And that's just rushing to get something we can't afford. And we can't afford it because we, as young people, lack discipline many times to hang on to that money. We get it, we want to spend it. There's so much to buy, there's so much to use it on. And so he's dealing with a very common problem. And young people, because they typically don't have a lot of income, and because they also haven't accrued a lot of credit, they need co-signers. And so I think the situation, either hypothetical for Solomon, is very practical in his time, or it's a truly realistic scenario that he was dealing with. But it's incredibly applicable to our world today. In these verses, Solomon is addressing this young man, and this young man that wanted Rehoboam's help shouldn't see Rehoboam's father as the problem. He also shouldn't see Rehoboam as the problem. If Rehoboam went to him and said, hey, I shouldn't have put my name on that paperwork. It could jeopardize our friendship. I really need to get out of that arrangement. Let's see what we can do to make that happen. This friend is going to be agitated, for sure, but he shouldn't see Rehoboam as the problem. When he finds out that Rehoboam's dad got involved and gave him this advice, he shouldn't see Rehoboam's dad as the problem. This young man needs to see himself and his lack of discipline as the problem. He really, ultimately, and we're going to see this in a moment, should see his lack of wisdom as the true problem. And that's what Solomon's going to try to do for him. He's going to try to help him see that. So Solomon then in verse number 6, he's trying to shift the attention that this friend has on Solomon to an ant. This young man is probably very upset with Solomon as far as his counsel. And so instead of looking at the big king on the throne, Solomon says, get your eyes off the big king on the throne for a moment and look at that little creature in the ground. Instead of looking at Rehoboam's dad and seeing him as the problem, I want you to get your eyes off of me and get your eyes on that little creature, this little ant. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. We read this and we might be tempted to think, Solomon, you're being pretty harsh on this young guy. Why call him a sluggard? That's not a term that's endearing. It's a term that would infer that you're upset and want to, offend this young guy. Well, I don't think he's at all trying to offend him intentionally. Sure, he's using pointed language. By calling him a sluggard, that should be getting his attention. But he doesn't stop there and says, hey, go to the ant, sluggard, and walk away. He says, go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise. Solomon is trying to help this young guy. He's trying to help point out the true problem in this young man's life. He's trying to give him advice, not just in any way create an argument or debate with him. He's trying to help him see what he needs. It's not a better work ethic. It's not even a better financial strategy. This young man needs wisdom. And in trying to steer this young man in the right direction, he's helping all of us learn at least two very important lessons. And the first lesson is simply this: foolishness is the father of failure. Foolishness is the father of failure. In verses 6 through 8, Solomon shines a spotlight. He gets the magnifying glass out without shining the light on the ant and frying them like little kids. But he shines a spotlight on the little ants. And this tiny creature, it has no leader. Now, if you're familiar with ants, you might be thinking, well, wait a minute. There's the queen, and the queen is the center of the colony. And indeed, there is a queen in the ant colony. But if you consult with people who study animals, and if you consult information about ant colonies, you'll find out that the queen gives life to the colony because, of course, all the little ants come from the queen ant. But the queen does not give the colony order. The queen does not give the colony directions. Indeed, the ant has no king, the ant has no guide, it has no overseer, it has no commander, it has no president, it has no guide, it has no counselor. It doesn't have somebody giving it order and structure and direction. The ants are in a colony, and these colonies are made up of millions of individual ants. These ants know their responsibilities. They know their duties by nature. And they go and fulfill those things faithfully without anybody harping on them, without any signs on the highway telling you, what to do, without any direction from a particular palace to tell you how to behave and what to do. No mother and father harping on you what you should and shouldn't do. The ants are incredible creatures. They by nature have been given wisdom, and they know they must be disciplined. They know they must be diligent if they are going to, and if the colony is going to survive the colder, harsher days to come. And so armed with wisdom, it is diligent and it is disciplined. The ant is diligent not because it was raised by a father and mother who instilled good work ethic, but the ant is diligent because it is wise. The ant is disciplined because it is prudent. While there is an abundance during the harvest time, the ant is busy preparing for the inevitable time of need. It has a strong work ethic because it has a wise mindset. It has a sound savings plan because it has a wise mind. It doesn't need a father to remind it what to do and what not to do, what to spend and what not to spend, or what to co-sign and what not to co-sign. It doesn't have a mother to tell it what to withdraw from or what to invest in. It doesn't have a pastor or a counselor or a boss to tell it when to work or when to rest. Solomon's intended audience, which is this young man in need of a loan, is surely upset with him. And he's upset with the father of the friend. And what Solomon is doing here by pointing out the ant has no guide, no overseer, yet it's still doing the right thing, preparing for the future. Solomon is essentially saying, hey, you're focused on me and you're blaming me for your frustrations, but I want you to look at a creature that doesn't need a father to meddle, doesn't need a dad to intervene, doesn't need a helping hand from anyone. It knows what to do. And he essentially is saying, if you have wisdom, you don't need any help from anyone. If you have wisdom, you don't need a father to tell you what's right or what's wrong, what you should or what you shouldn't do. Solomon in this passage wants his son to avoid the foolishness of co-signing, but he also wants his son's friend to avoid the foolishness of taking out unnecessary loans. And when he addresses this friend, he doesn't tell him to consider the ant and be more disciplined like the ant. He doesn't tell him to be more diligent like the ant. He doesn't tell him to go out and get a better savings plan like the ant. No, he tells him to be wise. And what Solomon is teaching this young man, he's teaching his son the same thing. He's teaching all of us the same thing. He's telling us that the problem with our bad financial decisions, with our bad work ethic, He's telling those of us who may have issues when it comes to keeping a job or showing up on time and doing all the right things. Those of us who get into debt, all of us who have problems with work ethic and saving and spending. He's telling us the issue is not in our hands, it's in our heads. He's telling us, listen, the ant does what it does so well because it's wise. You see, how we think dictates how we behave. How we think about life dictates how we approach work. How we think about life dictates how we spend our money. Wisdom is behind every good decision, and foolishness is behind every bad behavior. Foolishness is the father of failure. The ant's mindset is what determined its approach to working hard and saving food, and so it will be for us. Moms and dads, young people alike, the most important thing our children need to learn is not how to work, but why they should work. The most important thing young people need to learn is not how to save, but why they need to save. Wisdom tells us that down the road, the rain is coming. Wisdom looks at the calendar and sees the seasonal changes, and wisdom says, listen, winter is coming. You can't grow crops in the winter. You can't fix certain things in the winter. So the time to do that is now. Work ethic won't be a problem if you have prudence to look down the road and see that there's a need coming, and now's a better time to gather the resources and get the job done. It's wisdom. And wisdom points out that the inevitable problems in life will be coming. Solomon said in Proverbs 27:1, boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. He would write in Ecclesiastes these observations that he made. He said, the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill. He said, but time and chance happeneth to them all. Meaning, you can have everything buttoned up properly, but still, there could be problems that you have to be ready for. You can't control every injury. You can't control every car. You just can't make life perfect, and so you need to save. And to save, you need to work. And to work and to save, you should do that before the problem comes. That's wisdom that tells you that. And when you know those important lessons in life, those truths in life, well, then work ethic won't be that difficult to instill. Work ethic won't be that difficult to do. Saving money won't be that hard to do. Wisdom produces good work ethic. Wisdom produces sound saving plans. It's foolishness that is the father of failure. Someone who has a poor work ethic, there's foolishness behind that, not just a poor work ethic. Someone who spends everything, there's foolishness behind that, not just a bad understanding of finances. Foolishness is the father of failure. Understand that if our children are taught only to work, meaning we teach them the value of work, which is good, but if we teach them only to work without giving them wisdom behind that lesson, then they will focus on their career. And a focus on their career will ultimately come at the expense of their family. If we teach our children only to save, without explaining why they're saving. You're not saving just to accrue an unlimited amount of money, and that's not the goal in life, is to have as much money in the bank and to be able to solve every problem that may happen. But if we teach our kids only to save, without giving them the wisdom why they are to save, then they will focus on their money, and that will come at the expense of their faith. So it's not just teaching our kids to work and teaching our young people to save. It's teaching them wisdom. Wisdom will teach all those other lessons because it will give them a reason for why do I work? I work because I need to provide for myself and for my family and for our future. So therefore, I'm not going to put all of my eggs in the basket of my career because my career is not my life. The career is just a means by which to provide for my relationships in life. Why am I saving? Well, I'm saving to provide for a potential problem. So I don't need to have $6 million in the bank at the expense of enjoying an apple today and have rice for 99 years. You balance that with wisdom. And if you're not careful, foolishness will creep in, and that will be the result of, or the consequence, and failure will come. So Solomon says, consider to this young man, this sluggard, Consider the little ant. For a little wisdom in the brain of this tiny creature can accomplish much good. And the second lesson in these verses is this. Procrastination is the parent of poverty. Procrastination is the parent of poverty. Again, Solomon, I don't think in any ways is intending to offend this young man as much as he is trying to get him to think. In verse number 9, he says, "How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep?" That's a question mark for both of those statements. Not an exclamation point, not a in-your-face, "Sluggard, you're a sleeper, you never get up, you're lazy." I truly believe he's trying to get this young man to think. Again, wisdom rests in the mind of a person, and that mindset is what determines or produces good or bad behavior. And wisdom in the mind will be evaluating who we are, what we do, and why we do it. So he's trying to get his son's friend to think, when are you going to wake up? How long are you going to sleep? Solomon's not against sleep. Remember, he's a Jewish man. He's not against rest. He's a Jewish man. Didn't God implement an entire day of rest for the people forever? So on the seventh day, they were supposed to rest. There's value in rest. Solomon's not against sleep. He would write in Ecclesiastes, the sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eat little or much. So Solomon understood the necessity for sleep, and he saw the wisdom in resting. But he's trying to help this young man manage his sleep by having the right mindset. There should be a time when he awakes. That's why he's asking. When, verse number 9, when wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? There should be a limit to how long he sleeps, which is why he asks, how long wilt thou sleep? A man who's going to succeed, a woman who's going to succeed should evaluate their sleep and realize, I shouldn't sleep forever. There should be limitations to my rest. There should be a time when I awake, and there should be a limit to how long I sleep. Those who don't limit sleep, those who don't see the need to put parameters on it, will procrastinate in life getting to work, if going to work at all. Those who don't see the need to put parameters on sleep and discipline themselves, they will probably not get out and do the things they need to do in their homes, on the job sites, and out and about. A lack of wisdom when it comes to sleep will lead to a lack of discipline. And a lack of discipline will lead to a lack of food. That's why the ant, who knows wisely, prudently, a colder day is coming, we must gather food now. The discipline is it's created by wisdom, and therefore food is gathered, and that ant and that colony survives the hard times because of the mindset. And a young person or an old person who lacks wisdom will not be disciplined. They will procrastinate everything in life. They'll sleep, they'll justify it. A little sleep, a little folding of the hands, a little rest, a little break. They'll justify it. They'll deceive themselves into thinking they need it. And as a result, they'll not get what they need. They'll not get the job or the promotion that they need. And they will eventually experience poverty. Solomon actually declares imminent and harsh poverty. He said in verse number 10, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so shall thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. He said, if you're not disciplined because you're not wise, poverty is coming. And you may not see it, but it's coming soon, and it will show up unannounced. It will show up unwelcomed. As a traveling person, meaning you have an aunt who lives across the world, and all of a sudden she shows up with a knock on the door, and you're not ready for company. You're not prepared to host this family. Back in these times when Solomon is writing, there's not email, there's not text, there's not cell phones, there's not phones at all. So in many cases, they would show up unannounced. They would show up without any notice. And so poverty, to a person who doesn't see down the road, who doesn't have wisdom, it will show up one day unannounced and, of course, be unwelcomed. Solomon says not only will it show up unannounced as a traveling person, but it will show up and will come as an armed man, meaning you can't stop it. Meaning you can't just put it aside and quickly fix it. No, an armed man takes you over. And therefore, poverty will take over someone who is not disciplined with both their finances and their work ethic. Because of foolishness, they will not have sound work ethic. They will not have good financial planning. Poverty will come, and they will not have the wisdom or diligence or discipline to get out of it. Poverty will overcome them like an armed man. And it is the procrastinator in life, the person who lacks urgency, the person who lacks wisdom, who says, well, we'll do this, and when the problem comes, we'll deal with it then. Or if it doesn't work out, we'll deal with it then. Well, unfortunately, if you don't have the discipline now, if you don't have the diligence now, if you don't have the work ethic now, if you don't have the wisdom in how you handle money now, and the problem shows up down the road, you're not magically going to be wise. You're not all of a sudden, in an instant, become disciplined and diligent as the ant. And that poverty is going to ruin you. And it all starts with the mindset of, just a little more sleep. I can sleep in a little longer. I don't have to show up to that meeting on time. I don't have to show up to work on time. I can be late just a little bit. I don't have to return a phone call right now. I can wait a little longer. I don't have to return an email or a text. I don't have to get back to my chores. I don't have to go take out the garbage now. I don't have to fix that light just now. It can wait a little bit longer. Procrastinators, in their mind, a little bit of time is not a big deal. And what they don't see is the big picture. A little bit of time, the next day becomes a little more time. And the next day becomes a little more time. And they don't realize they're putting off responsibilities and duties and courtesies to people for a long time. And what happens is people lose trust in you. They lose confidence in you. They can't rely on you. They can't turn to you. And therefore, they will not employ you. Or they will not commit to you resources. They will not give to you what you need. They will not give you a job. They will not give you opportunities. And it all starts with the deception in the soul of a fool who says, just a little bit more won't hurt. Just a little sleep. You see what Solomon's doing in these passages here. He's dealing with finances. He's dealing with work ethic. He's dealing with loans. But he goes right to the core. And it's about wisdom. It's about foolishness. It's about your mindset that dictates everything else. And here he is taking two little things. A little ant with wisdom can produce much good. A little sleep without wisdom can produce much pain, much hurt. Paul the Apostle warned against justifying any amount of a lack of discipline when he said, know ye not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump? Solomon, in his song of romance in chapter 2, verse 15, he warned of foxes, but he referred to them as little foxes. He said, those little foxes, they'll spoil the vine. How many of us in our homes have little creatures, whether they're termites or bees or ants, little things that come in and just make a mess of stuff. Right now, the world's dealing with just a little virus. It's making a mess of stuff. So a little bit without wisdom can produce a whole lot of problems. This young man, hearing now this response from the wise king, the wise father, says all of this big debate, this big conversation over a little loan, over a little signature, even in response, this young man, if he's unwise, is probably saying, what's the big deal? This is just a little loan, a little cosign. Again, there's a lack of wisdom in seeing beyond that little problem. This young man lacked discipline because he lacked wisdom. He saw no danger in a little sleep because he lacked wisdom. And the procrastinator, he will put off getting to work. He will put off getting back to responsibilities. He will put off getting back to people. He will put off doing what he should do because he doesn't think beyond today. He doesn't see the snow coming. He doesn't see the rain coming. He doesn't have the prudence to foresee the evil and hide himself by preparing properly today. So these verses in this passage teach us two important things, and that is this: foolishness is the father of failure, and procrastination is the parent of poverty. Proverbs chapter 6. I hope you're able to take these words and apply them to your life, no matter how old you are, no matter how young you are. I sure hope young people are taking the Word of God and applying it to their souls, because it will spare you from a whole lot of problems. And I hope parents are employing the lessons that Solomon is teaching here to your own kids. But I hope all of us, no matter our age, we're allowing the Word of God to create the wisdom of God in our lives, because everything good starts with wisdom. It is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. God bless you.